How would you define what coded energy is? What does that mean to you? What is the meaning behind it? And anything else you want to give us about it?
I was given the name coded energy during a psychedelic journey. So it wasn't my idea. Not something that I devised myself. I was sitting in the backyard going through this experience with a friend of mine, and he was playing the harmonica. And as I was closing my eyes, I could see coded energy. I guess that's what it was. I didn't know what it was called at the time, but it was like I could see that the fabric, the structure of matter is just coded energy. It was like almost like the Matrix, that green screen with all the letters. It was like I could see things were made out of that.
Like
it
information?
just looked like, yeah, basically like information and energy combined, coded energy, right? And then the name came shortly thereafter. So I wrote it down knowing that it was significant, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And then along the way, I've been wanting to rekindle the YouTube channel and get back into it because I periodically come and go, but I didn't want to do it by myself, because when I'm by myself, I'm only half of me. The other half of me is right here, and it's not a metaphor or an exaggeration. I feel like we're literally the same being, and I know we're all one, but this is in a different way, to the point where it's almost like I'm incomplete without Candace. So, it took months, probably almost over a year, to convince her slowly but surely that we could do this together and that it would be amazing, and that what she brings to the picture is something that I don't have and that the world sorely needs. And so eventually we got here where I was able to convince her to join me on here. And I didn't want to obviously continue with the outsider's perspective, because that was something that I was doing solo before. So we went with the coded energy name, because that's what we are. That's what we all are. We're all coded energy.
Yeah. Writing the code.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
I guess how we've built it, and where we started and where we are now and where we're hoping to go in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Is like once you realize this is a sort of code, this is sort of like information reality that we're in, didn't create, but we're in it. You can co-create with the creation. You can start to write the code, and that's like the secret. So would you say that's kind of what your channel is about, like showcasing you guys writing this beautiful code of energy of your life?
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Absolutely.
I think the way we have chosen to live our life is very different than what you see every day, not just on social media, but just in everyday life. And we just figured, well, Ollie has wanted to put us out there for a while. I, not so much. I'm very content to just be quiet and, just within our own little family and friend circle. But we've opened our house in the last year to a lot of people, and it seems to be benefiting our community. And so this is the next step, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. This is about us, just us. And we get to talk about the stuff that we're passionate about: parenting, relationships, spirituality, spiritual practice, especially because, back to your point, Gary, I think spiritual practice is how you become the code breaker and the code master. Yeah. It's how you can start writing your own code, your own energy code, and live life according to your own values and your own principles and ideals. And so, the spiritual practice piece is a big part of the channel, and discussing what we do, all the different things that we incorporate into our lives to make sure that we are writing the code, and that the code's not just being written on us or for us by external forces.
Yeah, man. That's the thing. You either write it or it gets written for you.
That was the first part of both of our lives, and I'm sure yours, right? Like, we were not aware of the code, and it was written for us by other people.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you either play the game or the game plays you. It's another metaphor.
Having spiritual values in this day and age, I think, is unusual.
Yeah, right. It is quite unusual. We live in Kali Yuga. So we live in the dark period, unfortunately. Yeah. Mostly,
and materialism is quite rampant. So
yeah, that's the god.
The
It's funny.
demiurge.
Yes, exactly, man. We live in the world of it's just, I don't know, delusion, and I don't want to get too much into it, but yeah, it is tough to stay on the straight and narrow of God, you could say, or of love. But is that what you guys do for each other? You keep each other on the straight and narrow?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah. I always joke that whenever she's at her worst, I'm at my best. And then when I'm at my worst, she's at her best. So we're always kind of catching each other, you know, like one day I'll be really patient with the kids and she'll just be like, shut up, you know, and then the other day I'll be like, you want me to throw this grip on you? And she's like, it's okay. You know, she's like the calm one, right? So it's like, whenever she's lacking, I'm usually strong. And whenever I'm lacking, she's strong. So yeah, we definitely keep each other on the straight and narrow. I think that's a fair assessment.
We've found a way to like just flow very well together. And so that's what he's saying. Like when I'm not at my best, he is, and we just balance each other really well. And I think that dynamic with children is very challenging. Yeah. And like everyday life stresses. So, and then in between that, we've been able to grow individually because of our spiritual paths, and we do it very differently. Yeah. Right. But
which is why I think that it's important that we're in the channel together, because what I bring to the channel is like the Stoic philosophy, the mysticism, the spirituality. You bring stuff that is completely outside of my wheelhouse, but that's equally important, equally relevant to living consciously, deliberately, spiritually. So all of that stuff that you're bringing to the table was missing when it was the outsider's perspective, because I don't talk about fasting. I don't talk about cold therapy. I don't really talk about working out. It's something that I do. It's part of my daily practice, but it's not something that I would ever talk about on the channel. Whereas now it's more balanced, right? It's not just about the philosophy and the spirituality. There's like the physical practices as well that you bring to the table. So,
well, and we've both come to spirituality through different routes. Like Ollie is very mind, right? It's the mind that brought him in. And for me, it's the physical. So we come at it from different ends. And then in the process, we've both been able to find our soul or our spirit or our center and then explore the other avenues.
Oh, that's wonderful. What is this thing that you're getting closer to in your own way, in your own practice? How would you describe what you do that brings you closer? You know, what are you guys getting closer to? What is this spirituality, and how do you help each other out in that aspect?
I'll give you a good answer, a short answer. What I feel that I'm moving towards by following this path and by sticking to the daily practice is wholeness. Yeah. Completeness.
Like she brings you closer to really what you are.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, she helps me to discover who and what I am as well, right? I mean, she's the one, and I've said this many times before, she taught me how to love. When I was a kid, I was loved. My parents loved me unconditionally, which is a blessing I've learned, because a lot of people's parents aren't like that. So I had love growing up, but I never learned how to give love until I met Candace. Wow. So she's my greatest teacher. And, you know, until you learn how to love, are you really your full authentic self? I don't think so. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. She does help me. She helps me move towards wholeness, because she helps me to understand who and what I truly am, and then I can become more of that. Right.
It's powerful stuff.
I agree. She's a powerful woman. So humble too. Yeah. What about you? What do you think you're moving towards on the spiritual path?
I would agree. Yeah. And again, it's so beautiful. Every time you say that, it makes me tear up. But I would say, I've always had a lot of love for others, but not myself. And so Ollie's helped me learn to love myself. So same thing, just being whole, right? Like body, mind, and spirit, being a whole, happy, healthy being that has purpose on this planet.
Make me tear up too.
Yeah. And see, that's the ironic part, is that loving myself has never been a problem. I've always been very good at that. I was an only child, and it was like, I was always the number one priority. No one ever came before me. Right. Yeah. Before me, there shall be no others. That was my line. But Candace was the first person that I actually wanted to put in front, like ahead of me. Like I genuinely wanted to put her in front of me. So that was the first step, I think, towards opening my heart and actually learning to love people. And now I love all kinds of people. So I gotta be careful sometimes, because I'll be like at a work function and I almost tell like, I love you. It's like, no. Can't say that to colleagues, right? Like, shut up. Right?
They just be a little weirded out.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, now I just feel like my heart is so open and I feel love for all kinds of people all the time. But for a lot, for the first 30 or not 30, first 25 years of my life, probably, I just love myself.
21.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
He was 21. We started dating when he was 21 and I was 19.
Wow.
So we've been together a long time.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So she brought you to you, but in bringing you to you, you realize that you extends beyond you.
That's right. That's very well said. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wait a second. There's more to me than me.
Yeah.
Brought
you out of the ego a little bit, man. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and my parents, for all they did right, to some extent, what they did was a disservice to me, because they never expected or required or, explained how love works. Like, they just gave me everything. I was always number one. Like, if we lived in a house, I'd get the master bedroom. My parents would get the second bedroom. Right? They'd always give me the best of everything. And so I got used to just being the center of everything and having everything and being the first priority. So in a way, it was like, they set me up for this lesson. So it was good, because if I hadn't been like that, I probably wouldn't have met and, gotten with Candace, and I wouldn't have learned what I've learned from her. So, but my parents definitely set me up that way. It was like my dad would say, on my dad's birthday, he would come up to me and say, "What do you want for my birthday?" He'd get me a present on his birthday. Like, that's the kind of like distorted, like, view that I had of the world. It's like, it's all about me. Why would I get you a present? Like, what? Buy you a present? Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, kind of. It's funny.
You're really fortunate, because not everyone has parents like that, right? Like, so attentive, so loving. They really cared about him and played with him, and it's really beautiful. And especially nowadays, a lot of parents don't have time for their kids, and I think that's why children are suffering. They get what they need in the sense of like education, not very good food, but at least they're getting food, and activities, right? They have time to be social and interact with other people. But what they really need is true, genuine connection with each of their parents. They need to be seen. They need to be heard. And yes, in an everyday busy life, it's really hard to get that. But even a little bit is enough, right? Like, just a little bit every day to really be seen and heard. And I think that's what we do for each other. We really see and hear each other. And that's what children need. And so you got that.
The spiritual path leads to love. And there's many different ways to get there. There's many different forms that the guru takes. But it all leads to the same path, the same destination of love, and to find out that you are loved no matter what, but also you have the ability to love others at the same time. And that's just too beautiful for words. It really is. And to truly reside in that at all times, for the best of your ability, at least, that's like what life is really all about. And that may sound like the corniest thing in the world, but I really do think that's the truth, man. That's why we're here. Is just to reside as loving beings through our struggle, through our strife, through our suffering, whatever we got to do, whoever we got to be with, to remind us of this loving presence that we are engulfed in at all times. That's what it's all about, man. It's to just literally become love. That's the essence of this life. And yeah, man, you're not going to get that from the world. I think we already talked about that. We live in a world of delusion, illusion of ego. It doesn't tell you that at all. So it's interesting. Like, we have to find our way back to it. We have to find a certain kind of guidance on the path. So it's a blessing that you guys found each other and were able to find love through each other. Because I don't think it's available for a lot of people. I think a lot of people's karmic circumstances in life, they're just it's very difficult to find God, you could say, in the turmoil of our world. So it's quite a blessing that you guys met each other, and so young as well. So good karma, whatever you guys were in your past life, probably some good people.
And I think we worked through the bit of that karma together.
Yeah, I think so
It wasn't
too.
always.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started off rocky a little bit, but
yeah,
again, we're 19 and 21.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But there was something that drew us together and kept pulling us together. And we were just able to find a way to communicate effectively. That's huge, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it took some time, obviously. Communication was challenging at the beginning. And there was other stuff too, like, because we both had lots of triggers and we both had tempers.
Yeah.
And I had never had a real romantic relationship that lasted more than like a month before Candace. So she was my first real girlfriend in a way, where we were like living together and stuff. And my parents never fought growing up, and they still don't fight, but I never saw my parents yell at each other or fight. So the first time she and I got into a fight, I thought like, oh, well, this relationship's not going to work. And it's like, it's not normal to fight. And Candace, what's your background like
my
with your
experience
parents?
Was my parents fought. We all fought, right? That was just a common occurrence. And so when he always tried to break up with me every time we got into a fight, and I'd be like, this is normal. Like, what's wrong with you?
Couples fight. And it's like, no, they don't. Yeah. My parents never fight. I don't understand. So, but once we got through that things got really smooth, and like to the point where I don't think we've had an actual fight in a decade. Like, I feel like we've had now what we call a fight is like nothing. It's just like a 2-minute exchange, and then we like, oh, sorry, I was being rude to you, whatever, it's over. But like we used to fight for real. Yeah. And you used to go, like, Candace's thing is like go low. Like, she would like say things to push deliberately. She knew exactly what she was doing, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, oh, it's fighting dirty. Like, I'm sorry. No, it's all good. It's just now we don't, now that's not even happen anymore. I can't even fathom.
Aware of what I was doing at the time. Like, now I wouldn't do that. I would never choose to do that. But then I did. But again, it's like
because you were hurt, and then you were hurting back, right?
Yeah.
So
hurt people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they put it out there for everyone else, and that's what I did.
Yeah. Live and learn.
Yeah.
Well, I still remember like the last fight we had was on Cedar Hill. It was right after I had my cubicle epiphany, and we were going down the same pattern of fighting. And I was sitting in the kitchen washing dishes, and she was mad at me that I wasn't doing enough around the house. And she was like, you don't do anything around the house. And I'm sitting here with like dirty dishes in my hand, like I'm literally washing the dishes. And I looked at her and I said, do you really think that? And she was like, yes.
I was also like just about to deliver a baby.
True. But it was the first time where I didn't respond and get at her. And it totally changed the whole dynamic.
That moment was pivotal. It literally shifted everything in our relationship in terms, like, we were always in love and we had passion and we had fun together. But that was the point where it shifted the communication and how we interacted when times were rough and when it wasn't smooth. Mm-hmm. And so he reacted differently to how I typically reacted in that scenario. And he gave me space to like process how I was being. And he showed up differently, and then I was able to show up differently. And that
was like the last real fight that I can remember happening with you. Mm-hmm. And it was just because I didn't respond in kind, right? Yeah. Typically she would say some like mean, hurtful thing, and then I would hit her back with something similar. Mm-hmm. This time I was like, oh, I don't do anything around the house. Is that how you really feel? She was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I just kept washing the dishes. And she came back 5 minutes later and apologized to me. That was the first time in my life that had ever happened. And since then it's like, no, we just don't fight. Like, it's just not an experience that we have, which is pretty awesome.
We get into like heated conversations, like we're really passionate about something, and then the kids are like, are you guys fighting? Like, they ask us.
They don't know what it's like. They've never seen it.
It's really cute.
We're just having a really passionate discussion, kids.
Yeah. It's a yoga of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like a yoga, right?
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's conscious too. It's not unconscious, It's not just going through the motions. Like, we're present with each other.
That's what's important.
Candace was saying, we see each other, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm on my phone and she's talking to me and I'm like, yeah, like we actually connect.
And
we do daily.
Talk,
like every day.
Yeah,
that's huge, man. Especially in in the matrix that we're living in. That's really big to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I feel as though, I don't know, I'm not in other people's relationships and other people's houses, but I feel as though a lot of relationships aren't relationships. You know what I mean? It's just people coexisting together.
Yeah.
They're not actually in relation. It's just kind of like this fake, I don't know. It's just almost like a show that people put on for others, or they just want some kind of sensual pleasure out of it, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of fake relationships in our world, which is why the divorce rate is above 50%, something like that. It's why a lot of it doesn't work out, is because truly, I think this is another corny statement, finding real love is rare. Like really finding somebody else that completes you, that you feel is you. That's pretty rare, man. Someone to like complete your dharma here, that's like, I don't know, that's tough. And we try to do it, I feel as though, and I'm guilty of this too, in people that don't even like deserve it, or maybe like also I don't deserve them at the same time, like we don't, it's just like not right. Like a lot of times I feel as though, and this, I'm speaking personally, we get into relationships with people just for the wrong reasons, and we stay in them for the wrong reasons. It's just like archaic in that way, like the idea of, I don't know, the idea of marriage is beautiful, but I feel as though we abuse it, or it can be abused in our world. So when you actually do have a real marriage, which it seems like you guys do, then it truly is a holy matrimony. And it's just like, I don't know, I feel as though it's like your whole life becomes a psychedelic experience. And I'm not speaking personally. I don't actually have an other half. It's just what my intuition tells me. When you find like somebody else that is not actually somebody else, somebody that's the other half of Gary per se, the other half of Oliver or Candace, I feel like something changes. Like there's like a different wavelength. Like, would you say, I know you guys were young, so it might be a little hard to say, you don't have much experience, but when you met each other, was it like night and day between not knowing each other and then you met each other? Is like there's something, just this big switch in your life that happened?
I know for me it was.
Or was it gradual?
No, it was immediate. Because like we ran into each other the first time. Her and her friend were giving me and my friends a ride somewhere. Long story short, she was sitting in the front seat, I was sitting in the back seat of the van, and I didn't even really fully see her, like, because she was facing away from me. But like, I caught glimpses of her, and even then, I didn't exchange any words with her. But even then, I was like, there's something there. And then when we finally did like hook up, I remember the next day talking to my friend, and I wanted to tell my friend about Candace that I had just like hooked up with at the bar the night before. And I was like, what am I doing? Why do I want to talk about this? It's just some like encounter at the bar. But I felt so happy that I wanted to like share it, even though there's nothing to share. It's like we weren't even dating at that point. You know what I mean? So I knew right away there was something there. But again, having no experience as a 21-year-old with no real relationships under his belt, I had no idea what I was getting into. No idea what was happening. I just felt there was something for sure. I was like, well, that's weird. I'd never felt that for a girl before. So I think that I wasn't lacking when I met Candace. And I think that's one of the reasons that we worked for each other, is that neither one of us was looking for love. In fact, we were on the opposite train. Candace, what was your stance at that point?
I did not want a relationship at all.
Yeah. So it's like, I was done looking for relationships. Candace was in the same boat.
I was young, and I was in I think 2.5 year relationship, like my first real relationship. And I wanted to be single, and I wanted to just do my thing. I was 19, right? I had a job, I had a car. I was just starting my life. I was going to move out of Victoria and go on an adventure, and then I fell in love. And everything changed.
I took the best years of her life.
I think the important part about what you said is that you didn't come into it with a sense of lack. You weren't trying to get anything out of each other for the most part, I guess. Like you were good how you were. And I think that is the perfect foundation for a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Well,
agree.
and you mentioned before, you don't know why people get into certain relationships, or they get in for the wrong reason, and then they also stay. And I think that we are drawn to people for a reason. There are lessons there for us to learn. I just think it's hard. It's hard to learn those lessons because in learning, we're triggered sometimes. And so Ollie and I, like we've said before, it was very rocky at the beginning, but that's because we both had a lot to learn about ourselves and about the world and about being in relationship with someone. And we did that together. And we could have broken up and gone on to other people, and the issues that we had would have just been baggage that we carried into the next relationship, but we actually processed with each other.
Yeah.
And I think people come and go in all of our lives, and there's a reason for that. And some people are there for a very short period of time, and other people stay forever. And yeah, I just think there's a reason for any exchange.
Well, the reason for you guys was your children. When it really comes down to it. That's a huge extension to the relationship, man. That's love on another. That's like, that's love greater than you have for each other, right? Kinda. Would you say that? I don't know. I don't have kids.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's just different. Yeah. It's like, it's same with multiple kids too. Like after you have your first child, you think, oh, how could I ever love another being this much? And then when you have your second child, it's like you discover a whole other source of love within you that you didn't know was there. And it's like, oh, it's just as vast and infinite.
You have 3 kids?
Yeah.
Oh, so what was the third one? Third time of charm?
The same, but you don't have the fear of not loving them. Because you know that you're going to, you know? Yeah, the second you're like, oh man, I'm not loving this kid as much as the one I already have. And then you do, because they're different people, and your heart is so expansive. There's no limit to love.
What about like
and then with
kids, these people that have like 12 kids? Like, can you even imagine? I can't imagine.
No. Well, and the problem too
for your family.
Yeah, if you could live a life where you could actually spend your time with your kids, and you had 8 to 12 kids, I think that would be amazing. But the problem is, even with 3, that's a lot. Like it's hard to divide your energy and attention 3 ways. Now, to do it with a full-time job and chores and all the other responsibilities in life, that's challenging. Now, throw in a few extra kids, and it's like you each get 5 minutes a week, you know, like, so it's a disservice to the kids at that point, unless you have the type of life where you don't have to work full time and you can just be at home spending time with the kids, which is another way I think that we're different from a lot of other couples. When Candace and I started reproducing, we had this agreement that one of us would be staying at home with the kids. Like, we're not going to have kids and then at a year send them off to daycare and pay some stranger to raise my kid.
Right. That doesn't make any sense.
No. So that put us in a bit of a situation, because we've been living off of basically one income for the last 10 years. 13 years.
Essentially. Like I've always worked, but it's been part-time.
Yeah.
So that I can be at home. I can be a full-time mom and housewife, and so
it's been a sacrifice for us, because we're not doing a dual income. We drive a 2003 Dodge, I just don't caravan. We don't have always the nicest things compared to some of our friends. But the trade-off is our kids were raised by their parents.
Yeah.
And there was always somebody at home to take care of them, to be there for them. They weren't raised by strangers in a daycare with a bunch of other randos, which no judgment. Again, all of our friends have gone that route, and we understand it. For some people, it wasn't a possibility to do it the way we did it. So we've been blessed that way as well, to be able to, and now we both work from home. So it's like, I'm home literally every day. So the kids get to see us all the time. Right. So we have presence in their life.
That's beautiful. That's how it should be, honestly. If you're not in a position to be able to do that, maybe you shouldn't have kids. I know accidents happen, but like, you gotta have some responsibility in that. You have to have you gotta bring that consciousness into the creation. Like, if you're gonna create life, like, you have to be able to sustain it and be able to nurture it from 0 to 18. I don't know, whenever they grow up. But having other people do it for you, I guess it is in a way, it's a blessing that we even have that. It really is. But to me, that's not the optimal way of conscious parenting. I don't think. That's just, I don't feel as though that's the way to go about it. But I'm not judging either. I'm not judging.
No, Same.
Yeah, well, you have to do what you have to do. That's just the standard way, I would say right now. It's just that's what everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has a job. You decide to start a family. You get married. You have kids, or you have kids, whatever, and then you go back to work. And there's daycare, right? And I think people just do it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right. Just like you're supposed to graduate, and then you go to post-secondary, and then you get a career, and then
get married, you buy a house,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're just like following the prescription of the world.
Yeah.
And people need income. They need to live. Times are hard and expensive right now, so they just do it without really thinking of the kids. They think like, oh, it's fine. Everyone else does it. Kids go to daycare, right?
That's the problem with the world, man. That's the problem, is that we just follow the prescription. We follow the programming. We just fall into somebody else's ideal of life, like where does it come from? Who knows? Centuries past of conditioning after lifetime after lifetime. But we just easily fall into that. So that's the spiritual path, is kind of breaking out of that. Breaking the chains out of that and saying no, right? In the code, no, and saying no to that way of life and living how you truly want to live. And that's in, your own life, but also where it really comes down to how we change the world is how we raise our kids, man. I really think like that's how we bring about this new world. I like to speak about it. I don't know how much you've listened to me, but I believe what we're here to do is turn hell into heaven. We're turning this world into a better place and a truly hospitable place for all of us here, to truly enjoy this place. And how we do it, yes, is ourselves. We save ourselves to save the world. But in turn, I really do believe it takes time. It takes, Timothy Leary says it takes 2 generations to really change up paradigms. And I kind of see that, I can kind of see in 2 generations, we could really change the world. So what I'm trying to say is what's the most important thing here, I think, for all of us on the spiritual path that are householders, is to raise our kids in the most optimal manner that we can, so that they can go on and raise their kids, right? Think about how if you raise your kids, which I trust you are, in this beautiful manner, conscious manner, think about what their kids are going to be like. They're going to be like times 10 of whatever you're doing for them, right? Ideally.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah, or we push them, too hard, the pendulum, right? Like we're trying to raise them a certain way, and they're going to go the opposite direction because it's like mom and dad were always going on and on about these things, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to add too, ironically, that our decision to stay at home and have one of us be there with the kids also gave us the opportunity and the blessing to help our friends with their kids. Because my best friend, his daughter, we did childcare for them for years. So she was like, she's part of the family. Obviously we're all part of the family, but she's literally been raised at our house for the most part. So at least our friends, they had to pay for childcare, but at least their kids were coming to us and not some random people.
Some random 16-year-old getting paid minimum wage.
Yeah. And obviously our friends trust us and they see how we raise our kids. So it worked out really well for not just for us, but for our friends as well, because how many people's kids did we?
Lots.
Yeah.
And not all of them for like extended periods of time.
Yeah.
But we had people coming and going if they needed help. I still do it a little bit. Like we still have kids that kind of come and go when their parents need someone. And
Yeah. So we've had the chance to touch more than just our kids' lives. And my best friend's daughter, they were just on a trip visiting family, and Candace is into grounding, barefoot in the dirt in the ground. And she's got all of our friends into it now because they come over for like a barbecue or whatever. And she's like, take off your shoes. We're in the backyard, right? Barefoot. So anyways, our friend's daughter, Madeline, she was out there barefoot, and her grandma's like, put on your shoes. And Maddie's like, no, I'm grounding. It makes me one with nature. And it's like, can't help but feel like we're influencing these children, with our hippie ways.
It's a positive influence. I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't exposed to any of these modalities till, I don't know, mid-20s, maybe early 20s. And I had to find out myself. It was thanks to the internet. But my family, my upbringing, my friends did not teach me anything about grounding or meditation or yoga or who I am, or that God is love or any of these ideas that we're talking about here, I had to expose it to myself. So to have these kids exposed to it from you guys, from, you know, trusted teachers, that's something beautiful, man. It really is. That's truly a blessing for them. But like I said before, I think that's how we change the world, is we just kind of plant the seeds, you know, in the kids, and they just grow up without having to go through the struggle that we went through in order to get on this wavelength, you know, because it shouldn't be that hard. I don't think it should be that hard. I feel as though, you know, one can look at the spiritual path and see a lot of, I don't know, a lot of skeletons in our closet that we got to work through. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of deconditioning from the conditioning. But that's only because we live in a backwards world. If we actually raise the kids right and the next generation right, then it should be just like smooth sailing, you know? It shouldn't be difficult. Even though a lot of people say the prescription is difficult, like it's a little, you know, the dark night of the soul is the term for a reason. I feel as though you shouldn't even have to go through a dark night of the soul. It should just be natural to be inclined on this path. You know what I mean? And I think that's really the future. I really think the future, our future generations aren't going to have to go through what we went through, the sacrifices that we had to make in order to, you know, have a little semblance of happiness and joy and peace in this life, you know?
Totally. I think kids are already there. They're already in tune. They're so present and full of love and joy, and we condition it out of them.
Yeah.
And so what Oliver and I are trying to do is just maintain it as long as possible, right? And give them the messages, the teachings, what the guidance that we've received from great teachers when they need it, so that they can just continue on their, you know, they're already there. Like, honestly, they teach us so much.
Yeah.
Like,
and
parents,
kids
parents
teach you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, if you're not learning as a parent, and you're not, I would suggest you're not parenting, to be honest, because they're constantly exposing you, and they're the biggest triggers in my life now. Like, no one else that I can think of really can trigger me. There's no colleagues that can trigger me. Candace doesn't trigger me, but man, my kids trigger me all the time. And to me, triggers are teaching moments. If I'm getting triggered, there's something within me that I need to look at. It's not just like, well, yeah, it's because the kids are misbehaving. No. Kids can misbehave. I don't have to get upset. If I'm getting upset, there's something in me. So still lots and lots to learn about myself through the kids, and, you know, my own upbringing and my own parents and how they raised me and how that's made me the parent that I am, for better or worse. Yeah, there's just constant lessons.
Constant lessons. Yeah.
Constant.
It's never going to end, man.
No. No,
it's become adults. They're going to become your friends. I mean, not that they're not your friends now, but they're going to be your, like, you know, your adult friends. It's going to change. Yeah. They might even teach you even more at that point.
I hope they will. Yeah. And I mean, we learn lots, not just about ourselves, but we learn lots about the world through our kids too, like especially our 13-year-old, because, you know, we're out of touch. We're 40. Oh, I'm 40. Sorry, I don't want to speak for you. You're not 40 yet, but I'm so out of touch. So like all the lingo and the terminology that the kids are using these days, it's like I'm picking it up from these guys now, you know? That's how I'm staying hip.
That's funny.
So I'm staying cool. I know what sus means. It's like, all right, I'm good. You're good.
That's what you think. They're probably like, oh, he goes, Dad, you're embarrassing.
Oh, yeah, she is. Yeah. She is.
Dads always think they're the coolest, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't even have to try to embarrass her. She's easy. Just have to be myself around her, and she's like, Dad, stop.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good though. It's interesting that you say that about raising the kids and how that's how we're going to change the world, because we've been saying that as well about our kids for a while. You know, Candace specifically, she's been telling them since they were little that they're going to change the world, and so
that they already have by just already being in it.
Yeah,
that's what I always tell them. Like, you're here to change the world, and you already have. You know, so there's not too much pressure.
No pressure.
Right? Like, just by being born, you have changed the world. Sure. Everyone that you come in contact with in this world is changed by your presence. And that goes for everyone, right? I think it's important for kids to hear things like that, and just for them to know that they're loved and enough just the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I agree with changing the future, they are the future. And it's funny because as a kid, I heard that, but I didn't understand what it meant. And now I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think generationally, like you mentioned before, it does take a few generations to heal the past and the hurts and the pains.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we're trying to do, take his experience of receiving everything and my experience of not
giving everything.
Yeah. And then just finding a middle ground for them.
Yin yang.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, you guys seem to have a nice relationship.
Yeah, we like it.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we got a good thing going.
Yeah.
But cool. You mentioned how it's hard it shouldn't be hard to get on the path. It shouldn't be hard to kind of come to some of these realizations. Why do you think it is so hard? Is it because the world is backwards? Is it because the world is actively working against you realizing these things? Yeah. That's what you think.
I think the real question is, where does that come from? Because it's pretty easy to see once you get on this path that we're off our rocker, and we have been for quite some time, it seems. So my biggest curiosity is like, well, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And essentially the Buddhists would say it comes from our desires, right? Dukkha. So what is the primal desire? This is getting kind of esoteric. It's like, what is the primal desire that led us astray? Well, really, when it comes down to it, I like to say our primal desire was to be something other than God. And that's how we became human. That's how we got here. That's all of our desires. That's the premise. It's something other than being. Trying to be something other than we really are. And that's how we, got here thousands and thousands of years later, I like to say. Maybe that's a little too esoteric, but I think you guys can kind of understand. That's how we came to this dark world, is because we're dissatisfied with being at one with our divine nature. Who knows why? Maybe I don't know why. I don't know if there even is a why, but I know it happened. Like somehow, some way, we got tempted. And the temptations built upon temptations and temptations and temptations and temptations. And here we are in this seemingly faulty form with a lot of karma. So yeah, to answer your question, 100% it's because we're living in some kind of backwards world, but it's actually a world of illusion. It's not real. Like we built this illusion ourselves, but it's not real. Like we're just coming back to the real, like where we came from, I guess you could say. But the thing is, it's like, it's so thick at this point. It's very difficult to be able to come back home. It's, you're not going to find it in the illusion. That's the thing, is I think we're all looking for it in one way or the other. We're all looking to come back to God, or you can say come back to ourselves. But we have misplaced priorities on how to go about that. Like I believe every single human being wants that, but we just look for it in the wrong places. So
the external world.
Exactly. Which is
that's the world.
And that's why it's foggy and confusing. Right? Yep. We're not taught to look inside. And I think that's a reminder that kids need. Yeah. Is that the answer isn't here. Yeah. You got to go within, Amen. Yeah. And I think comfort is a big motivator. I think another reason why we're in the world we're in is comfort. We wanted like peace and comfort when we were, again, this is not going as far back as I think you went, but when we were like hunter gatherers, it's about comfort. Yeah. And we've just really gone down that path into the material world.
Yeah. Safety. Yeah. Safety and comfort, because it wasn't guaranteed for 99% of our history. Again, if we evolved according to the theory, most of our life survival wasn't a given. So when we got to a place where we were able to design new tools, plant food, grow our own food, we had this sense of safety that we always craved, and then that led to, again, more safety, more comfort, more luxuries, more unnecessary things, right? To make to feel safe.
Desire. Yeah. So again, there you go. Desire to be something other than God. but we've just followed the path into an area that it doesn't make us happy. And we're so disconnected.
Yeah. And I think that was needed in our evolution. We needed to have that desire for comfort and safety. I mean, yeah, you could argue, I went really far back in kind of like an esoteric manner, like I said. So you could argue that it wasn't needed, but I guess we ate the fruit, you could say. So it was needed in our evolution at that point in the hunter-gatherer times. But the problem is that we still have those inclinations within us for survival and safety and competition and me, all is mine, right? Because you needed to have that. You needed to have those sets of ideals to survive. If you didn't, then you didn't pass on your DNA. That's why we all have it, because the ones that had that passed on their DNA. The ones that didn't, they got eaten by the tiger or something, you know? But the other tribe took them over, so they didn't get to pass it on. So what I'm trying to say is those unconscious motivations are deeply ingrained in us. And I think those are the ones that are calling the shots in the material world. That's kind of what created the world that we live in, the world of illusion. It's those same desires that the hunters and gatherers had. That's what the powerful oligarchs are working on currently. That's what that's what we're all working on. Honestly, we're all working on that still. And the spiritual path is transcending that. It's not negating that, right? We're not like ignoring that part of our being, the animalistic being. It's that we're saying that like,
I'm more than that.
Yeah, we're more than that. Like that's not,
that's a part of you. It's not all of you. Yeah.
When I feel as though before you know that's even a thing, that's your cap, right? Like you stay hunter-gatherer minds. How do I say this? You stay in the hunter-gatherer mindset until you find the path. Like you stay in those just unconscious, egotistical inclinations until you find that greater sense. So we need God at this point. I don't even know. I don't even like saying God because it's weighted, but it's the truth, man. We need to just, I guess you could say, find a sense of ourself that extends beyond the egotistical self, beyond the me, mine, hunter-gatherer mindset of competition. I don't even know where I was going. What was the original question?
No, we're just talking about the way the world is backwards and what caused it, and the chain of desire that we were talking about, whether it's the desire to be other than God, or
we break the chain of desire through the spiritual path, or else the chain of desire just keeps going. Like we're still in it, right? I guess it's like we still have desires, but it's to not let our desires run the show. It's to recognize them, maybe partake in some of the desirable actions, but it's to not let them dictate what we do here at an ultimate sense, you know? Because I think that's really how we got into this world, is our lower nature and our desirous nature kind of ran the show and put us on autopilot, like wrote the code, you know?
Yeah.
Desire, man. Desire.
And desire is inevitable. I think it's our attachment to desire that is the issue. So kind of what you were saying, you can have desires, but if you're detached from them, it means that they're not going to govern you and they're not going to motivate your actions. You see that you have this desire, but you don't have to act on it. You have space, detachment from it, because the as long as you have a body, I think 11 as long as you have a body, you're going to have desires, because desires are essentially just physiological cravings for the most part, that are in the body. So if you can observe them and not follow them, then I think that's kind of the answer. But hoping to have a life without desire, to me, is like, well, you'll stop having desires when you're dead.
You can't.
But I don't see the desires going away until that moment. I think that
connected with the physical.
Yeah, exactly. And same with the ego, right? Trying to kill the ego, dissolve the ego. Well, the ego is built into this vehicle. It's the pilot. You can't get rid of it, but you can make sure that it's not running the show. You can make sure that it's a helpful servant instead of this manipulative, cruel master that's sabotaging you and making your life miserable. So
yeah, man, you can even say the fuel of the ego is desire.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a certain way.
Yeah.
it's up to us to be either the master, like you said, or the servant to it. It's huge, man. Yeah. So it's like there's a part of it's weird because there's a part of us that is completely conscious of all of it, but then there's another part of us that gets tempted into desire, right? You know, you shouldn't eat the cookie, but it tastes so good, right? It tastes so good. And you eat it, and you're in the moment. Then after you're like, oh, you lament that you ate the cookie.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we know we have this conscious part, the devil and the angel on the shoulder, right? That's the metaphor. We all have that. I feel as though it's like this the duality of man. It seems we know what's right, but yet what's wrong, we fall for it. You know, it's the fall. We continually fall. But I think,
how can something that feels so good be so wrong? You know, I think that's what it comes down to as well, is our wires are crossed. Like the most delicious foods are the worst for us, right? A lot of the funnest activities are terrible for us, for our health, right? So it's kind of like we've got conflicting priorities or conflicting desires. Like I have a desire to be healthy, but I also have a desire to have a few drinks tonight, you know? So it's like this conflict of what do I do and what's going to win out?
It's like everything in life, finding the balance, right? Finding a balance where it's not detrimental and you're also not depriving yourself.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, that's the essence of Buddhism. You know, Buddha went out to live in the woods to get enlightened, and what he came to find is that's not it. Asceticism is not the way. So he came back into the kingdom after his enlightenment to teach. And I think that's a huge lesson that I feel as though a lot of people don't really think about in Buddhism. We think of the Dharma that he taught, and it's all wonderful, but think about what he did, like his life. I like to look at, this is a side note, I like to look at teachers such as Buddha, Jesus, you could even say Ram Dass, whoever else, Alan Watts. I like to look at their lives, not only what they said, but I like to look at their whole life as a lesson. So if we look at Buddha, like his life, he lived the middle way. He figured out that living as this ascetic monk in the woods, fasting for 40 days, something like that, wasn't it. You know, and Alan Watts the same way. You know, he was like he was such a wise person, right? So wise, and it's just the way that he spoke was so eloquent. But he was an alcoholic, and I don't know. It's the story behind the person that I feel like has more resonance than what their actual teachings are. Or maybe the story behind the person that gives their teachings a little more resonance. Maybe that's a better way.
I agree
with that.
Yeah. On the topic of Alan Watts, do you feel that his personal life and his lifestyle choices somehow disqualify the value of what he wrote and talked about?
No, I don't think so at all, to be honest with you. A lot of people do, but I think they're missing the point. They're missing that part of the story. It's like, he was an alcoholic, but don't you understand what he was trying to convey or what he did convey to us? So it really doesn't matter if he was an alcoholic. Like the Dharma is the Dharma. It doesn't really matter what the vehicle of the Dharma is, what condition it's in, as long as I guess it's able to it's
transmitting the truth.
As long as you can transmit, it doesn't really matter what one did in their personal life. I mean, I can say maybe.
Sorry to interrupt. If anything, it just proves that he is human and that anyone can do it, right? If he still had his demons and yet he still strived to live that life, you know?
If
anything, I feel like it adds more relevance to his story.
That's the cherry on top. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like real. He's not like this perfect being that we are never going to be able to, you know, that's, I think, what Jesus is for a lot of people. It's like he was too perfect. Yeah. So how do you get
He's
there?
Been elevated to a place where we can't reach. All we can do is grovel at his feet.
Yeah, but Alan Watts was real.
Human.
He was human, and Anyways, I'm sorry to have cut you off.
I don't know. I don't even know what I was gonna say, but that's the beauty of all teachers. I think is to ultimately bring us back and show us ourselves. I think I said this before. It doesn't really matter what form the guru takes, as long as they bring us back into ourselves and to see that we have desires, we have faults. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean we can't chase that perfected state. you know, and not even chase. I don't even think that's the right word. It doesn't mean that we can't live on better ideals just because we do have our faults in the human condition. I think as long as you can see that your faults, but still, still like yearn, not even yearn. I'm trying to think of the right word. It would still live for a greater purpose, you know, a greater sense of being that extends beyond those desires. I think that's what matters. As long as they bring you into a meaning of life, you know, that's all that matters in your humanity. That's the purpose, I think, beyond for true teachers, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I make sense there.
Yeah, you made sense to me. I like what you said, though. I was thinking about this yesterday too. Idols versus ideals.
That's good.
Right. Like having idols versus having ideals. And the ironic part is that when you focus on ideals and you start to clarify what ideals you want to live by and how that's going to change your behavior, as you start to change your life according to these ideals, you will be drawn to people who embody those ideals, and those can become your teachers. So instead of starting, like most people start with the teacher, they go, okay, Jesus is my teacher, and then they go and learn. I'm saying if we do the reverse and we come up with what we feel is true, the ideals that we want to live by, that will lead us to the right teachers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So instead of having idols, we should have ideals, and they will bring us to our idols. Yeah. Ironically, right?
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. But I completely agree. Just blindly worshiping a person or elevating a person like Jesus above all and worshiping instead of learning. That's the mistake that I think many Christians make, is that they don't actually study or follow the teachings of Christ. They just believe in Christ. And it's like, okay, but you believe in him, then what, right? How does that impact your life? How does that change your morality, your behavior, your values? And it's like, oh, it doesn't. They just, I believe in him and I'm saved. And it's like, no.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
No. Like, that's not what he said. Did you guys ever read what he said? You should go find it. So, yeah, but if you are, again, pursuing ideals, you're not going to be sucked into that trap, because if the person is not representing those ideals, you're not just going to worship them or follow them blindly, right? Because you're following the ideals, not the idols.
That's what's important, man. And that's the thing too, is when you chase ideals, not even chase, I don't even know what word to use, but when you, I guess, go after ideals instead of idols, it doesn't even matter if the person was real or not, you know, getting back to the story element. It just matters the ideals or the Dharma that they embodied and gave to the world. Even if it was just a story, even if Jesus was not a real man. All that matters is the story and the Dharma and the coded energy that they conveyed to us. That's how I see the Dharma, man. It's a sort of code. And the code, how do I put this, man? It's codified in many different ways. It like evolves. And it's a certain kind of, it's almost like a different language that people speak, you know, or not even speak, because the Dharma can be something that you see as well, or something that you witness. But it's something, it's a message, it's a transmission that goes beyond just base level understanding. Like there's something in true Dharmic teachings that it just hits your soul, right? That's how I see it as a code, truly. Like there's something special about somebody that just knows how to convey the Dharma. It's like, I've never heard people speak like Alan Watts, or I've never read teachings like Yogananda before, or I never heard Dhamma teachings from the Buddha. It's still, they're using the same language, the same terminology that I'm used to, you know, the English language, but it's the way that it's used, right? It's how these words are used in such nuanced manners that it becomes sort of code-like, you know what I mean? And I feel like once you get the transmission, it's kind of like you have to pass on the code. It's like once you get the download, right? It's like time for you to upload, because I think, like I said before, the way that it's codified transforms. So, right, I'm kind of going off a little bit here, but try to follow me, right? The truth is the truth. The Dharma is the Dharma. Back when Buddha was born, back when the Vedas were written or sung, it was still the Dharma that we like to try to speak about today, right? The truth is the truth, and the wise call it by many names. So back in the day, the only way that the truth could be conveyed in, I guess, codified or transmitted was through speech. For most of our life, for as far as I know, as humans, it was just around a campfire, probably just singing songs about our origin story, right? About like where we came from and how we got here and who we are. It was all just song. And then eventually someone came, probably thousands, hundreds of years later, and wrote down those songs, right? Wrote them in maybe poems or riddles. And it became stuff like the Vedas that we know, right? I think that's the oldest text or religious text that we have, at least. I'm pretty sure it's the Vedas. I'm not 100% sure. But my point is, it transformed. The Dharma went from song, speech, word of mouth, at first was the word, and it transformed into the code of text. So that was pretty prevalent for thousands of years until we got audio. How long has audio been around for, audio recording?
70 years, maybe.
70 years. Think about how new all of this is. The Dharma being codified in audio recording from when previously it was just written, and most people couldn't even read.
Yeah.
So my point is, I'm kind of going off a little bit here, is we have this like understanding of the Dharma, and now I feel as though it's like almost up to us to be the transmitters of this with the new technology to codify it in a new form. It's and it's quite new. It's like experimental in a way, but I feel as though that's the purpose of truth. That's the purpose of this code, is it travels through us. It's a story that travels through us from, I guess, maybe the beginning of time. It's history, and it travels through us. And this is the current version of it. It's in audio recording. And I'm not even saying us. Who knows if we're doing a good job of it, but like people like Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Terrence McKenna, all of those guys, they were the first people, think about it, ever to record this kind of stuff that I've never heard before in audio. It's wild. It's wild. And
Wayne Dyer's another one.
Wayne Dyer, Joseph Campbell.
Oh yeah,
I really like him.
Yeah. But in that same sort of vein or group of that you're describing there, there's still not that many though. I mean, the OGs, the Alan Watts, and like Joseph Campbell, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Wayne Dyer. There's not that many more who are at that sort of cutting edge of starting to record talks on this subject.
Wild? And that was only last generation. That was only
since the 80s, right? Well, Joseph Campbell, I would say.
I would say 50s, 60s is Ram Dass, probably Terrence McKenna, probably 60s as well, but still fairly recent in the grand scheme of things for sure.
So I don't know where we started on this, what my point is, but the Dharma is a code. Right? It's something that transforms, this energy that travels through us. And maybe that's like a part of us that we're missing, like our story that we pass on,
It's missing a bit.
Yeah. It's not even it's not even my story, like our story. It's not our story in this call. It's it's the story of life and creation, like of the true purpose for being here, man. That's like something we're missing. I feel as though like being linked up to the Dharma. There's something about that. And the fact that we're able to do this is truly a blessing, man, to have this and to do this together and convey this together and work together on it. It's something new. It's something special. And I'm grateful for you guys to come on here and do it with me. And who knows where we're going for the future, because, with AI and stuff like that, who knows how the Dharma is going to transform,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, the separation from God into our physical bodies, and how I think the whole purpose is to get back to that God self, right? So it's like that journey out of the garden and back in, kind of what Buddha did, going into the forest, fasting, like putting his body through these intense things, and then going back to the castle. And maybe it's that the Dharma, it's already in the code. And when we have those experiences where we actually feel connected and present, and that we are connected with God and everything in nature, it reactivates the code that's already there. And so it like lights it up again. And that's why I think like experience is so important, because the words are great. All these teachers, through audio, through songs, through written work, they were trying to convey something that they felt.
Yeah.
And it's when you feel it that you fully understand it. And then you can tap into it. Maybe not all the time. The goal is to be there more and more and more. But it's hard to get there at first. But it's like once you feel it for that first time, it's like I just see like my twinkle lights going on. You know what I mean? It like just comes on, and then once it comes on, you can access it and you're aware of it. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking about while you were talking.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, it's about the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Information is only one part.
Yeah. Yeah. The experience unlocks what the Dharma code that's already there. Right. It's already worked into the being. It's just it needs to be.
Well, I would say this, man, the code unlocks us. Like the code unlocks the experience. Like the code ultimately needs to bring us back into the experience so that we can have a really good experience, I guess. I mean, that's what it's all about. The code is meant to bring us out of the state of the ego. Because I guess that's what Dharma, you could say, does, right? When you listen to a really good Dharma talk, it's a psychedelic experience. When somebody puts their words in a certain poetic and eloquent, nuanced way, it's like, whoa, what are they doing with my mind? And it takes you out of the loop, you know what I mean? Yeah. Ultimately back to experience. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well said, Candace.
Yeah, well said, Candace. That was good.
Sweet. Well, should we go do some parenting?
Yeah.
I think we got to go get some adulting done, but this was awesome, man. Thanks a lot for your time. Great to chat with you.
It was great meeting you.
You as well.
We'll do it again.
Keep on keeping on. Keep doing your thing.
Indeed. Yeah, you as well, man.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
Cool. Peace and love. Peace. Yeah. Stay centered, my friend.
You too, man.